name is Ron Gurwitowski. I'm the chairman of the Rhode Island Energy Facility Siting Board. I'm here today for a public comment hearing regarding what we refer to as docket number SB 2022-02. Relates to the caption South Coast Wind Energy LLC's application for a license to construct major energy facilities, Portsmouth, Rhode Island, formerly Mayflower Wind Energy LLC. I have a notice in front of me, which it's published. I'm not going to read the entire notice. We're going to refer to parts of it, and then we're going to have after I do that, there will be a very brief presentation by the applicant, and then we'll go to public comments. We do, as I mentioned before, we have a sign-up sheet, and if you haven't signed up, anyone, don't be bashful, you can walk down here and you can sign up with Pat. It makes it easier for us to just follow the names going through. But if you haven't done yet, don't worry, it's time for you to do it. We have a lot of names going first. But let me refer to the sign-up sheet first. I mean the notice first. Pursuant to the provisions of the Rhode Island General Laws, the Energy Facility Siting Board is conducting a public hearing. Today is Wednesday, July 23rd, and we are in the auditorium of Portsmouth Middle School. The purpose is to hear public comment regarding a project that is now pending before the board. On May 31st, 2022, South Coast Wind Energy filed an application to site and construct a portion of transmission and connector facilities located within Rhode Island that would connect South Coast Wind's offshore wind generation facility, located approximately 51 nautical miles southeast of the Rhode Island coast, to the regional transmission system at Brayton Point in the town of Somerset, Massachusetts. The South Coast Wind Generation Facility is capable of generating up to estimated 2,400 megawatts. The public comment hearing relates to an approximately 1,200 megawatt set of two high voltage direct current submarine export power cables with a nominal voltage of plus or minus 320 kilovolts, plus associated communications cabling, generally located within a single export corridor with an approximate length of 20 miles within Rhode Island state waters and underground on Quebec Island. I want to, that particular transmission line, which is jurisdiction of the board, is obviously connecting the offshore wind facility, which is located in federal waters, to the transmission system on land. It's important to note that the applicant is not seeking board approval for the associated offshore wind turbines, offshore substations, or any Massachusetts interconnection. Those parts of the project are outside the board's jurisdiction. It may seem kind of strange, but it is broken up. There's different jurisdiction over parts of the project. But where we have jurisdiction is the transmission that is either in Rhode Island waters or on Rhode Island land. To the extent it's in Massachusetts waters or in federal waters, we have no authority whatsoever on those parts of the project. We do have, as I mentioned, we have a sign-up sheet. There's a lot of people here tonight, and with this many people, I'm going to try to ask everyone to stay within 5 minutes of comments. I'm not going to be totally rigid about it, but when it gets 5 minutes or so, I'll probably at least send a signal to try to close out. And I hope everyone realizes I'm not trying to be rude to you, but with this many people out here, we'll probably be here quite a while. So what I'm going to start right now is the applicant, who is going to make a brief presentation. And I want to note that my fellow board member Terry Gray just arrived. So, Mr. Peter, here. You want to introduce? Yeah, you just have her introduce herself. That'd be great. Okay, go right ahead.
Awesome, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Well, thank you. My name is Kelsey Perry, for the record, K-E-L-S-E-Y, P-E-R-R-Y. I am the External Affairs Manager for South Coast Wind. I've been with the project for almost 5 years now. And tonight I will give a brief high-level overview of the South Coast Wind project as it pertains to the Rhode Island Energy Facility Siting Board. We can move to the next slide. As you can see on this overview slide, we will walk through key components of the project like routing, construction, community impacts, and project benefits. Before we start, I'd just like to highlight my team who's here in the room with us tonight. Ron mentioned Christian Capizzo, our local counsel. We also have Kelly Smith, our onshore engineering manager, Jennifer Flood, head of permitting, Rebecca Ullman, head of government affairs, Andrew McGregor, head of technical, Sam Ashey, fisheries manager, as well as other members of our team tonight who are here to listen to public comment. Next slide, please. So just to start with who we are, Ocean Winds is the developer of South Coast Wind. Ocean Winds itself is a joint venture between ENGIE and EDP Renewables, and is an offshore wind leader with a robust portfolio of 15 projects across 8 countries. Yep. Zooming into South Coast Wind, our project lease area is located about 59 miles southeast of Rhode Island's coast, or about 30 miles south of Martha's Vineyard. At full build-out, the project could supply approximately 2,400 megawatts of electricity, enough to power over 1 million homes in New England. This project, South Coast Wind 1, that we're talking about tonight, is for approximately 1,200 megawatts. This slide shows how the electricity travels from the offshore turbines to the onshore grid interconnection point. We use a combination of alternating current AC and high efficiency direct current DC in order to move the electricity from the turbines all the way to the point of interconnection. Our point of interconnection, as Ron mentioned, is in Massachusetts. It's at the Brayton Point Power Station in Somerset, Massachusetts, which was once a coal plant, now being repurposed for clean energy. Zooming in more to Rhode Island waters, the route includes about 70 miles of cable in federal waters, 20 miles in Rhode Island state waters, and 2 miles underground Portsmouth to eventually lead to Massachusetts. These cables will be buried, typically about 6 feet underneath the seafloor, and will follow a defined corridor in order to reduce environmental impacts. Here is what's going on in Portsmouth. Really what we're discussing tonight. In Portsmouth, the 2-mile underground cable route has been carefully selected to minimize disruption. The cables will come ashore at the intersection of Boyd's Lane and Park Avenue, continue under Boyd's Lane, and then head northeast towards Anthony Road and under Montauk Country Club. There will be no permanent above ground structures, just manhole covers where needed along the route. Construction and operation details. Construction will include a combination of trenching and horizontal directional drilling, both of which are widely used methods in order to bury underground transmission cables. The overall construction timeline is expected to last about 2 years, but this will be broken into discrete activities that will happen in different phases. Horizontal directional drilling, or HDD, will take about 2 to 4 months at each location. These construction activities may happen simultaneously at each location. Trenching will take place over 6 to 12 months, advancing about 50 to 100 feet per day, depending on the conditions. And lastly, cable installation will take about 2 to 4 months at fault locations every 1/3 of a mile along the route. So those are all of our construction activities. We're coordinating closely with the town of Portsmouth and the Department of Transportation to address traffic, noise, and scheduling concerns, and our website, southcoastwind.com, will provide up-to-date construction information when we are in that phase. Once construction is complete, the good news is that the cables are underground and completely silent. There won't be any traffic, noise, or visual impacts to the community during operations. Project need. Why we're here tonight. South Coast Wind is a needed project in Rhode Island because it provides a reliable, ready, and responsible solution to meet Rhode Island and the region's energy and climate goals. For example, Rhode Island and New England more broadly face a growing risk of energy shortfalls, especially during the winter and summer peak periods, as electrification increases in our region and fossil fuel sources continue to be retired. The regional grid is under more pressure to deliver reliable power year-round. Offshore wind strengthens the region's energy system by improving reliability and security, increasing fuel diversity, and supporting nearby demand centers. The South Coast Wind Project in particular will play a key role in helping Rhode Island meet its clean energy mandates. Under the Renewable Energy Standard and the Act on Climate, the state is legally required to achieve 100% renewable energy by 2033, and offshore wind is essential to meeting that goal. Moving on, currently there's no infrastructure in place to bring the power from our leash area to our point of interconnection at Brayton Point, so the infrastructure is needed. And lastly, this is a project that is really ready to go. We've been in development for over 7 years. Many members of our team have been here for several years working on this project, and we have a mature, advanced design that is aligned with state and regional energy plans. Next slide. Socioeconomic benefits. Any large-scale energy development project, whether it's renewable or conventional, will come with socioeconomic benefits. South Coast Wind will support thousands of jobs in Rhode Island and the region through construction and long-term operations. The project has signed labor agreements for both construction and first-of-its-kind operations and maintenance phases for the project. There are major opportunities for local businesses and supply chain growth as we build out this project. And we've also committed $23 million to the town of Portsmouth through a host community agreement providing direct benefits over 33 years. Moving right along, as mentioned, the project has been in development for 7 years now. We have undergone a multi-year review process, including robust permitting at the federal, state, and local levels. All required permits for the South Coast Wind 1 project have been issued by Massachusetts. We're continuing and have worked closely with agencies like the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, Coastal Resources Management Council, and DEM to meet all environmental and safety standards set out. And through this permitting process, we've, of course, conducted extensive environmental and engineering studies to guide our decisions and route selections in these permits. These include activities and surveys, as mentioned on the slide, including wildlife, sediment, noise, fishing activity, and more. The results have helped us design a project that avoids sensitive areas and minimizes community and ecological impacts. And last but not least, we have made a strong effort to keep the Portsmouth community informed about the project as we've been developing it. We've been holding open houses, we've sent mailers, we've done door-to-door outreach and have held local meetings. Our team is continuing to be committed to being accessible and transparent through the development process, construction, and beyond. And that's it. I just want to thank everyone again for taking the time to be here tonight. This is a great turnout, and we really look forward to hearing all of your comments. We're here to listen and to provide information as it's helpful. You're welcome to come up to our team after the meeting. And if you'd like to reach out to us, please email info@southcoastwind.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Perry. I do want to note that. I do want to note that my fellow Commissioner Meredith Brady arrived, and by the way, it was not their fault that they came in a little late. Unfortunately, the invite that went to them had the wrong location address. Otherwise, they would have been here before this began, so I don't want anyone thinking that they were just arriving late because of the early enough. But anyway, so I have a list here. I'm going to go one at a time, and remembering that we have about a 5-minute limit per person, and there's a sign-up sheet that continues to be here. And I ask, don't be bashful to walk down and sign up if you haven't done already. So the first person I'm going to call on is a Mr. John Homer, if I pronounce the name correctly.
Yeah.
So we have the microphone over there turned on.
Testing. You're gonna have to excuse me. I got a touch of Parkinson's, so I might have some difficulty. Not feeling too good with the humidity we've been having the past week, so it's tough on me getting out. Thanks for having me. I've been involved in making energy for 45 years, starting in 1972 in Groton, Connecticut, working in electric boat. made my way up the trade, became a first-class welder, became a pipe welder, and that occurred around 1980. 1980, the country was in the midst of building nuclear power plants commercially. We built 110 nuclear plants in this country. I was involved in 90 of them. I've been to 27 countries because of my work in the power industry, so I know a little bit about power, fossil fuel, nuclear, you name it, and I've been there doing it. A little concerned with this wind deal. The footprint, first of all, the footprint that it takes is enormous. It stretches as far as the eye can see. It's the same thing with solar power. The footprint for these solar plants are just horrendous. They're spread out. You can't even see one end to the other. And every one of those solar panels are filled with toxic silicon, which when the lifetime of the plant is reached its shutdown time, there's a issue on where and what and how you're going to get rid of this silicon that's inside these cells. That's just one of the issues with solar that I'll bring up. Wind, you guys talk a good game, but it's not enough. It's supplemental, it's good, along with other means of powering, but not just relying on one. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's not realistic. It's not feasible. I got a concern with when these rigs out in the ocean reach their lifetime duration, who's going to tear them down and get rid of them? I think Gina Raimondo gave these solar companies a deal where, well, let me back up. When I go and build a power plant, we have to tell the town, all right, we're going to be here for 30 years. When the plant's life is over, we'll take it down and restore the surrounding area back to the way it was before we came. I think Raimondo gave the deal with, don't worry about it, the taxpayers, the ones that's going to be foot in the bill, will let you slide. So beware, taxpayers. This is not a sweet deal. I might also want to mention the fact that the maintenance of something out in the ocean, sitting there day after day, there's a lot of wear and tear. The maintenance costs to upkeep these turbines are going to be horrendous. Just ask the people out on Block Island. They got 5 of them going. 5 of them are built, and at any given time, 3 of them are down. So don't expect too much. Promises are easily said, but it still remains to be seen if they're going to keep these promises. I highly doubt it. it's gonna be a lot of money, and it's gonna come from your pocket.
Ms.
Thanks
Timer.
for letting me,
Okay, good. I was going to say you had a little less than a minute
Yeah.
to finish.
I got a clock in my head.
Oh, very good. That was pretty good. Thank you. By the way, his name is H-O-N-E. Followed, by the way.
It's keywords, G-E-W-I-R-Z, as in keyword Stramier.
Thank you. One second. I just want to mention,
Yep.
folks, that Karen Gleason, followed by, looks like Kathleen, either Kit or Kits. I can't tell. Very good. Go right ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, and it seems like we've all got a lot of problems we have to solve, and I think we all think we know how to do it. So I would start by suggesting people read a book called The Certainty Trap, because so many people are so certain that their answer is the right answer. Example would be all these horrific weather events that we were just talking about, but yet our own BOEM, when talking about Vineyard Wind's final environmental impact statement, said, overall, it is anticipated that there would be no collective impact on global warming as a result of offshore wind projects, including the proposed project of Vineyard Wind. They even went on to say, in Revolution Wind's DEIS, it stated the full build-out of all projects in total will have, quote, no measurable influence on climate change. That awoke me. I started reading more, I started understanding, I want a solution too. So let's figure it out, right? And let's make sure that the group here tonight, EFSB, can really make an educated decision. So I would ask that you remember that the preliminary decision you made in October 2024 was just before the election and the issuance of executive orders. Whether or not you agree with them or not, it's a fact. These orders shifted national policy to prioritize nuclear, oil, gas, and coal over wind and solar, raising critical questions about energy costs, which I'm very concerned about, national and local security, public health and safety, and environmental impacts in Rhode Island, especially for projects like wind that were being given favorable approvals. No decommissioning, no cumulative impact study on all these farms. So I would ask that you look at the Rhode Island General Law, Section 42982, Section 3, that mandates energy production at the least possible cost to consumers while minimizing environmental harm to land, wildlife, air, and recreational value. Additionally, Law 42982-7 requires an assessment of whether cost-effective efficiency or conservation alternatives outweigh the need to propose South Coast wind facilities. We're told it's going to be in our best interest. As I said, with what BOEM said, we're not so sure about this. I think it's worth noting that the offshore wind project's website states, purpose and need statements pointedly assert offshore wind will allow states to meet renewable energy mandates. I've told my kids they have to meet a lot of mandates. Do they? Sometimes they need to, and they will find that it's a failure. Other times they will succeed. We need to recognize that just because a bar is set, it might not be the right bar and a necessary bar, one we can meet, and it might be one that if we try to meet, we cause massive destruction in the meantime because we're tripping over ourselves to try and get to the end. In light of the above, and the undisputed data that shows unreliable, fluctuating offshore wind will not reduce reliance on fossil fuels, but rather to protect the grid when the wind dies will require a 24/7 backup dispatchable fossil fuel energy source that will need to accompany, sorry, I'm getting a little tongue-tied there. I urge you to consider the facts and prioritize Rhode Island's economic, environmental, and safety interests in your deliberations that I know you will take very seriously because there's so many people here taking this so seriously. It's noteworthy that the New England grid has already bought 2027 and 2028 as much natural gas capacity as it currently uses. which to me shows proof that ISO New England can't take a chance and does not expect a net drop in fossil fuels as a result of bringing offshore wind to this area. At the beginning, we heard somebody from South Coast Wind say 1 million homes. That is not a measure. Is your home a tiny home? A massive home. We need facts, we need quantitative information, and I would also go so far as to say a final quote: "The earth will not continue to offer its harvest except with faithful stewardship. We cannot say we will love the land and then take steps to destroy it for future generations." Quote by John Paul II. Thank you. 5 minutes, 11 seconds.
Very good. Yes, and then Sandra Craig.
Karen Gleason.
What did I say?
That's me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say your name correctly?
No, you said
Oh,
it
okay.
right.
All right, fine. I'm
I just
sorry.
want to spell it Gleason for the record. So, this is a little yard sale sign I have here. I just want to tell you. It says, "No cables save our Seconic River and Mount Hope Bay." This is where I live. Me, Karen. And I live here in this town. This is, I'm going to say, my town. And I'm sure everybody is here from Rhode Island, which is great. Even if you're from Massachusetts, that'd be fine with me too, because we're all in this together. But the cables are coming down near my neighborhood. And I'm very worried. I'm extremely worried. I haven't slept very well at all. You can ask my husband. I'm up at 3, I'm up at 4. Because I'm very worried about 350,000 volts of power coming through the cables. And I'm sure folks will say, it's okay, it's going to be underground. I don't trust. And then South Coast Wind is going to potentially request another 350,000 volts of electricity cables to come within inches of the first 350,000 volts of cables. Doesn't sound right to me. I'm not an energy engineer, not a scientist, but I do have some common sense. In fact, those cables will be coming down the very beach that I walk. I walk frequently along that beach. And then on the other side, that's the Seconic River side, and then Mount Hope Bay, I have people right here in this room who go to the Mount Hope Bay area and they pray, and it's a serene place, and it's a place to go where you can relax, you had a difficult day, and just take it all in. And I'm not the only one in my neighborhood, and the other neighborhood, that's where the beach is going to come in. They're very worried. I'm speaking on behalf of those residents as well. The children play at those beaches every day. And even during winter, there are many walkers. And I'm very concerned. But that's, I got other things to say as well. So, again, my name is Karen Gleason. I am not only a Rhode Island resident, I am a property owner, and I do live in this town. This is my town. I really don't know how you guys sleep at night, because I don't sleep well. I'm extremely concerned, as I said. I am opposed to South Coast Wind's application docket, number SB 2022-02. My comments about not only the cables, but also the construction related to noise and dust impact along the beach, along Boys Lane, intersection of 24 in Boys Lane. Anthony Road would be the road that I go down to Boys Lane and I drive over, and I'm very concerned. There's not too many different ways I can go, leave my home, or get home without going on the roads where the cables are going to be underneath. And I'm concerned about the neighbors, quite a few neighbors that go along the path of the cables as well. On January 7th, Portsmouth Town Council President Keith Hamilton submitted an advisory opinion acknowledging that South Coast Wind's construction will bring temporary but disruptive noise while they do installations of these cables and doing a lot of digging. In it, the council called for clear and enforceable safeguards, beginning with South Coast funding independent noise consultants who must have an obligation to act solely in the interest of Portsmouth residents. I did tell you that I'm not very trusting. This has been a very difficult past 2 years. The town recommended creating a resident complaint hotline. I don't know if that's really going to be in place. It should be. Dust presents a very similar threat with noise, as noise does. The South Coast heavy construction will generate airborne dust, potentially impacting the air quality, public health, and the environment. Just like noise, dust must be monitored through independent oversight, not left to South Coast self-reporting. Residents deserve a hotline to report dust complaints and noise, and the town must have immediate recourse if conditions exceed the limits set. South Coast Wind should fund independent noise and dust monitoring. They should establish residents hotlines with clear response protocols for noise and dust, and mandate regular compliance with the Energy Facilities Siting Board. Also impose an automatic work stoppage and substantial fines if they violate Portsmouth ordinance. Again, I'm not trusting this project, the process, and I believe there are very many empty promises made. Portsmouth residents are being placed at high risk. Portsmouth residents are being placed at high risk, as well as the state of Rhode Island in other ways. So to that end, I urge the Energy Facilities Siting Board to deny the South Coast Wind application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Kathleen Kids-Van Hannigan, a little longer than the kids. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, what was it again?
Kids-Van Hannigan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So,
Can you spell that for the stenographer?
Kids, K-I-T-S, Van, V-A-N, Hannigan, H-E-Y-N-I-N-G-E-N. Good evening. I'm a Rhode Island property owner, and I oppose the South Coast Wind project because its economic and environmental costs far outweigh any benefits. South Coast Wind paid a $60 million penalty to exit its 2020 power purchase agreement to deliver 200 megawatts of electricity to Rhode Island at $76 per megawatt hour. A new price must be disclosed by December, but if it's similar to Revolution Wind's or Vineyard Wind's $98 per megawatt hour price, Rhode Islanders could be locked in for 20 years, paying more than twice the current $40 wholesale rate. Rhode Islanders already pay some of the highest electricity rates in the country, including surcharges for renewable infrastructure. Offshore wind would make this worse, not better. According to the Independent System Operator New England, ISO-NE, meeting climate goals with offshore wind would require 34,000 megawatts of capacity, 7 million ocean acres, and expensive grid upgrades. And because offshore wind is intermittent, fossil fuel backup will still be needed. Inefficient fossil fuel backup, adding both cost and emissions. Each offshore 11 megawatt turbine emits 7,000 tons of CO2 during manufacturing and installation. Multiply that by the thousands of turbines planned, and any supposed climate benefits are quickly erased. Plus, when the wind dies, backup fossil fuel plants kick in, emitting even more CO2. Environmentally, the damage is significant. Installing turbines and cables destroys seafloor habitats, emits electromagnetic fields, and risks chemical leaks. Offshore substations can leak sulfur hexafluoride, a climate-damaging gas 23,500 times more potent than CO2. And the turbines will discharge 10 million gallons of 90-degree chlorinated water into the ocean every day, killing millions of marine organisms, including copepods, which right whales rely on for food. Rhode Island General Laws, Section 4298-2, requires a cost-benefits analysis that prioritizes more cost-effective conventional energy sources. Yes, yet less than 16% of South Coast Wind's energy is even slated for Rhode Island, and Portsmouth would receive less than 2%. So for all this, Rhode Islanders would bear the costs: higher electric bills, lost ocean views, damage to fishing and tourism, harm to marine ecosystems, and unnecessary noise and risk. I urge the Energy Facility Siting Board to deny this application unless South Coast Wind signs a binding power purchase agreement that truly protects ratepayers. I also ask that the Public Utilities Commission or an independent body conduct a full, transparent, cost-benefit analysis that includes comparisons with dispatchable, conventional energy sources that are more affordable, reliable, and stable than offshore wind. Thank you for your time.
Yes, good evening. Actually, my husband, Grenville, will not be speaking because we got a confusion there. So
Thank you.
just
Okay.
okay. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Sandra Craig, and I am a property owner in Rhode Island. And I have concerns regarding the environmental and public health risks posed by the heat and electromagnetic fields that South Coast Wind's high voltage direct current cables will emit. These cables will emit heat, they will raise water temperatures, disrupt marine ecosystems all along the entire transmission corridor. Scientific evidence shows that the EMFs can adversely affect certain marine species. These risks are particularly acute in ecologically sensitive and heavily fished areas like Narragansett Bay, the Sakonnet River, and Mount Hope Bay. Congress has recognized in the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conservation and Management Act that habitat degradation is among the greatest long-term threats to U.S. fisheries. So the same principles affect our Rhode Island waters here. If this body, if the EFSB approves South Coast Wind's application, South Coast really must be required to monitor and mitigate these impacts through careful cable routing and by consistently achieving sufficient burial depth to reduce thermal and EMF exposure. These environmental safeguards must not be compromised for the sake of cost or expediency. I might also point out that construction activities such as dredging, boulder removal, and scour protection, as a previous speaker mentioned, actually, and I'm glad that that person did, because it proves that there are damages that will be caused by these, and there are very serious risks that accompany them. These activities will release toxic legacy contaminants that are buried in the seafloor, creating sediment plumes that will threaten marine life, the food chain, and human health. Compliance with the Clean Water Act, Coastal Zone Management Act, Rhode Island SAM, Freshwater Wetlands Act, these are all essential. And these laws are, but they're only meaningful if you enforce them. Under the Rhode Island, which this law has been quoted several times, under the Rhode Island General Law, Section 42, subsection 98, paragraph 2 and 3, the EFSB has a clear obligation, and I will stress this, to ensure that energy facilities are constructed, operated, and decommissioned, let's not forget that, with fewest possible adverse effects to the state's environment, wildlife, air, water, marine life, and the health and safety of all people. I respectfully urge you to deny South Coast Wind's application based on the unresolved risks to the Rhode Island environment, to its fisheries and public health. However, if the board moves forward with approval, then I would ask you urgently to mandate strict adherence to target burial depths and environmentally sensitive cable routing. Prohibit unnecessary seabed disturbance and prevent the release of toxic sediment plumes. Require South Coast to post a decommissioning bond before you get started. And protect the state from future liabilities, which will fall on the ratepayers and the taxpayers. And I would ask you to allow full public review of any conditions that are issued by this board. I think that's probably my 5 minutes, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
So good to see my green-shirted colleagues out tonight. Yes, yes. Say yes. Say yes to tripling your electric bill. Say yes to destabilizing the grid. And frequent power outages. Say yes to 24/7 fossil fuel backup for offshore wind. Say yes to deafening and killing marine mammals with sonar blasting and pile driving. Yes to ever more strandings and ship strikes.
No.
Say yes to destroying the New England fishing industry.
No more scallops.
Yes to ruining the tourist industry and wrecking the views from our beaches. Yes. Destroy the ocean for offshore wind. Actually, please say no.
Gary? Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Good evening, Gary Mataronis.
Can you spell the last name? I'm sorry. I watched it.
Mataronis. So, I've been a commercial fisherman out of Secana Harbor for 60 years. I have also been a member of Little Town Council for the last 27 years, and in 2023 we made a resolution against any wind farm cables running up the Secana River, and I'm going to submit that to the board here. We have many recreational fishing boats that sail out of Secana Harbor. How will they be impacted while laying the cables? We, the fishermen, are very concerned about electromagnetic currents given off by the cables. All fish, and especially crustaceans, are very sensitive to any form of electric current. They will disperse from any area that generates electrical currents. And will the cables give off electric currents that will disperse as sea life? I haven't heard anything about that. The Secana River all the way up to and including Mount Hope Bay has immense amounts of quahog beds that are a major source of income to our quahog fishermen. How will the dredging for the cable affect these beds? Previously, there were a few boats that would dredge quahogs with a dredge that went 6 inches to a foot into the sea floor. How will these interact with the cables? We also have many pond pots, fish pots, lobster pots, and gill nets fishing in the Secana River from March through November. We are very concerned this fishing gear will be damaged during the laying of the cables. We also want to make sure our sea life is not dispersed from the area and create a dead zone. There are several drag fishermen that tow nets behind them on the sea floor. How will these react with the laying of the cables and after the cables are placed? When the Secana River is being dredged for the cables, we anticipate there will be a massive mud plumes created. When lobsters, crabs, and fish ingest the mud from these plumes, it blocks their gills and they die. We do not want a massive die-off on our sea life in and around Secana River. We have a great contingent of recreational boaters out of Secana Harbor that most likely will be affected when the cable is being laid. Many of these boaters are recreational fishermen that contribute greatly to the town. We don't want them negatively impacted by the laying of the cable or any current coming from the cable. How will this be mitigated? As most people know, Secana Point is a stopover for boats coming from other ports and then heading to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. It is also a stopping point for boats when there is thick fog. How will these boats be affected? There are two pipelines that run across the Secana River and the seabed. One is a gas pipeline and the other is a water pipeline from the Watson Reservoir. How does Southwind plan on securing or getting past them? What happens if they rub together and create a break? Obviously, there will be aesthetic depletions from all the Middletown, Tiverton, and Fall River shorelines while the cables are being laid in the Secana River. Also, many restaurants and beaches will be negatively impacted while the cables are being laid. Please deny the request from South Coast Wind to dredge the Secana River. Also, while listening, so each head has 300 gallons of oil. What happens if they stop leaking when the seals go? They're going to go right into the ocean. What happens to the blades and the poles when decommissioning arises? Are they going to be taken out? Where are the blades going to go? They say that blades are already filling up all places like Oklahoma and Texas already. They can't be recycled. How many fossil fuels will it take, going to take to remove these wind parks? The poles, the blades. I don't think anybody realizes the amount of boats out there. My son's an offshore fisherman, he goes by there all the time. There's a massive amount of fossil fuels being used right now to install these. What's going to happen to the wind farm and hurricanes? I hear that they last in the North Sea. Well, the North Sea wind at 50, 60 miles an hour isn't a hurricane off the East Coast. And BOEM, somebody already said it, BOEM has publicly stated that these wind farms are going to have zero effect on climate change. That means nothing. Substations take in 65 to 70 degree water for cooling and return it at 90 to 95 degrees. How does that help climate change? We're talking about the water's warming up. One of the scientists says, oh, the waters are warming up. So we want to put substations out there. They're going to take 60 degree water and turn it around to 95 degree water. The Gulf of Maine is the fastest warming body of water there is. And now we're going to make it worse. So please deny this.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Maureen Coates, spelled K-O-E-T-Z. Thank you. I'm here. I am not a resident of Rhode Island anymore, although I once was down the road at the Newport Training Center when I became a naval officer. I've been advising many of the groups concerned with offshore wind in states here in New England, also in New Jersey and California. I am an attorney by training. I served as the Assistant Secretary of the Air Force for Installations, Environment, and Logistics. I've been counsel to the Senate Energy Committee. I worked for EPA for a while, and so I kind of like to think of myself as being fluent in both environment and electricity. A lot of people have made some good points tonight. I'd like to elaborate on them. But first and foremost is that Rhode Island does not stand alone when it comes to electricity. Whether they want it or not, they are part of the New England Independent System Operations, and all electricity decision-making is based on your being part of that grid system. There is a federal law called the Federal Power Act that requires every state within a grid system to maintain adequate resources. That means you've got to have enough machinery to make the electricity required by the demand. And that's not Rhode Island specific. That is ISO-wide. So if they're running out of electricity in Massachusetts, we ramp up Rhode Island. If Connecticut doesn't need it, it gets shipped into Massachusetts or New Hampshire. It's all share and share alike up here when it comes to electricity. And so resource adequacy is an ISO-wide issue. Rhode Island itself has statutes, you've heard some of them referenced. They're usually called obligation to serve. That's an equal statutory requirement to make sure you make enough electricity to meet demand. Now, demand last year was 116,000 gigawatts in the ISO New England. And the ISO New England made that amount with 29,000 megawatts worth of machinery, right? You hear a lot about 2,400 megawatts. Well, that's how many machines are going to be there. That's not how much electricity a wind farm would make. So by 2033, when everybody wants to be 100% renewables, you're going to need 140,000 gigawatts here in New England. Remember that 29,000 megawatts you use right now? Well, if you're going to do all of that with renewables, the ISO New England has just told us at the end of last year, you're going to need 97,000 megawatts of installed capacity. That's 97,000 megawatts of machinery somewhere. 34,000 of it would have to be offshore wind. 25,000 will have to be batteries. 25,000 more will have to be solar, and 7,000 more megawatts would have to be onshore wind. Now, each time you go and do one of these projects where it's 1,200 or it's 2,400 and it's these little discrete, segmented isolated projects, we're not necessarily taking into account what this means for the larger electricity system, and unfortunately, federal law requires that we do that. Now, I would offer to you that starting to build transmission lines before, oh, it must have been good. Starting to consider transmission lines before you have the entirety of your generation system worked out under the obligation to serve issues means this might be a little premature. Just to give you a quick one, 2,400 megawatts, if you build that whole South Coast project, it's only going to make 6% of the demand in New England. If you build out the whole 11,000 you're planning in the Rhode Island and Massachusetts wind energy areas, you might get 30,000 gigawatt hours. And then there's the other downside, which is you're not going to do anything about climate change. I'm sorry. I wish I could tell you would. In 1970, the state of Rhode Island had 13,000, the state of Massachusetts had 99 million metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions. You got it down to 59 in 2022. Great. Louisiana went from 144 to 199, wiped you out. Just Louisiana wiped you out. Okay, Rhode Island went from 13 to 10. At the same period of time, Texas went from 330 to 660. And oh, by the way, the Chinese coal plants that nobody thinks exist made 8.5 billion tons of greenhouse gases last year. Yeah. So God bless you. I worry about climate change too, but ruining your oceans and ruining your coastlines and ruining your fishing industry is not going to get you any results in climate change, and you're also going to endanger your electricity capacity and reliability. So good luck with everything. Thank you.
Coincidence or our mistake. I had the name Maureen Coates again spelled differently. I don't know if that's another Maureen Coates or our mistake. So we have Tom Grieve and Peter Roberts. Mr. Grieve?
Hi, I'm Tom Grieve, G-R-I-E-V. I'm a Portsmouth resident and property owner. I share with other Portsmouth residents and neighboring Rhode Islanders a concern about South Coast Wind's failure to provide required documentation in docket number SB 2022-2, as outlined in the Portsmouth Building Officials Advisory Opinion. Your preliminary decision and order from October 8, 2024 specifically directed Portsmouth building officials to assess whether South Coast Wind complies with the town's soil erosion and sediment control ordinance, Portsmouth Code 320-381. On March 6, 2025, the building official issued an advisory opinion stating that the project is, in fact, subject to that ordinance. He also confirmed that South Coast Wind's erosion and sediment control materials remain incomplete. He further stipulated that before any earth-disturbing activities can begin, South Coast Wind must submit a finalized soil erosion and sediment control plan and a full stormwater pollution prevention plan for the wetlands permitting. Documentation required under Portsmouth Town Ordinance 320-4. Yet to date, there is no evidence on the Energy Facility Siting Board docket or South Coast Wind's public filings that these critical documents have been submitted. The formal public records request to South Coast Wind for them remains unanswered. This isn't a procedural oversight. It has legal consequences. Under Rhode Island General Law 4298-10D, failure to provide requested information is grounds for recommending outright denial. Since the Portsmouth Building Inspector's advisory opinion was conditioned on South Coast Wind providing the various documents, and since there has been no finding that they in fact conform to the ordinance, I respectfully recommend and strongly urge that you deny South Coast Wind's application until the company submits all documents required under both municipal and state law. Without these materials, the Rhode Island Energy Facility Siting Board's ability to correctly evaluate the application in accordance with state and municipal law is precluded. Any approval without proper documentation risks environmental damage, undermines local authority, and compromises the integrity of the entire process. I ask the board to uphold the standards laid out in law and reject this application. Thank you.
Thank you. A letter in response to some of the points that Mr. Reed was making. I appreciate that. Thank you. 'Cause I'm not aware of the issue. You have perspectives. Thank you. The next name I have is Peter Roberts, and then again I had Maureen Coates listed. If it's a coincidence, and a second Maureen you'll be next, and followed by David. Looks like Brunetti. Mr. Roberts?
Peter Roberts, yep.
Go ahead. Yes.
Well, what I want to mention is that everything that's going on in the ocean is not good for the ocean or the life that's in it. But the main thing I want to point out is what we have, what we're being told by our government and everything else about climate change and record highs. But yet you go up to Kennedy Plaza and they took a bunch of trees away in the park. And there's brick roads there, fire bricks, that the sun bakes on. And that's where they take one of the readings for the high. And the buses come in there and sit there and run for quite a while. And they're going by that temperature. It's not right. It's what man put there to raise the temperature. And you go to the airport, TF Green, and back in the day, like the 30s and the 40s, record highs are still here. And that's when they had prop planes, and they only had a few a day. Now they have jets coming in and out of there all the time with them running. And they go by the temperature there. That is not an accurate temperature. And you go and you check the weather, like Hope, right? You see how low the temperatures are at different other places. And where I live in Island Park, I get the thermometer on the deck, and I'm watching TV and it says 80-some degrees. I look out there, it's 73 degrees. Okay? Because it's not the same when you're near buildings and different other stuff. And our government doesn't let anybody know that these temperatures they're using are false. They are not highs. They are because man did stuff to make them high. And different other things like climate change. I was born in Island Park, 1948. My father was born in 1990. And when the 38 hurricane came, the water level in front of the house I'm living in was 4'5", and there was no seawall. In 1954, Hurricane Carol, the water level in front of the house was 4'3". It's never been higher. Well, if climate change is there, why didn't we have it higher? Because those are two hurricanes that come in and hit right there, okay? And the water doesn't come up on the road. It comes up the road over from it, it comes across Pine, it comes in there. The backyard, the water level was never that high because it goes upward. And another thing with all the power outages and different storms, trees are the problems. Trees should not be near power lines. They fall on them and take them down. Or in the winter, ice builds up on the tree limbs and they fall down. It's nothing else taking them down. It's because trees don't belong there. What does our government do about that? Nothing. They don't remove them. And that makes our bills go up for electric. Because you got them people out there. And by the way, this hat, that's Local 70. That's in DC. And I worked down there with the power for quite a while. And up here, I worked with Local 104 out of Boston for many years. I joined that in 1970. And I know what trees do. And I know when we had a chance back in those days, we cut the limbs down and we got rid of them. And all this other stuff about different storms. Go Island Park, road floods. And they actually showed it when they show another thing about climate change. And it's because they put more sand on the beach so the water can't run off. And if the state doesn't go down there and take a backhoe and dig the holes so the water can come out, it stays right there in Park Avenue like flows. But if they dig the hole, and I filmed it, the water runs right off. This is all stuff they do to tell you lies. Open your eyes.
Thank you. My name's Sal Carceller. It's Carceller. And I'm a resident of Portsmouth. Not only am I a resident of Portsmouth, I view the Seconic River. I'm blessed where I live. It's one of the most beautiful places in the Northeast. I've traveled throughout the world. I spent a considerable amount of time at McQuarrie's Point with my family, friends, and others. Even spend evenings there. I have a question for the siting board. Have you visited any sites along Portsmouth? You don't have to answer it, but I'm going to make a suggestion. Please go to McQuarrie Point so that you understand what you're about to approve. I don't have an opinion, but I can tell you that it doesn't make sense. You are not crossing a river just to cross it. You're traversing that river from its mouth to Brent Point. The entire river. Class A, Class 1 waterway. The only one in Rhode Island and one of the few. It is imperative that we get this correct. What's going to happen is, I'm not a scientist. I am a statistical analyst by trade. I've done data science and analytics, so I look at numbers. I'm going to ask the siting board to consider this. Would you ever approve a project that you knew was destined for failure and would never be used? You don't have to answer that. But ask yourself that while you're sitting there at McQuarrie Point. And then, let's talk about the reality of where we are today. Why is offshore wind no longer favored under the current administration? They were voted in, all right, whether you like it or not. I'm going to go through a couple bullet points. Number one, executive order halts off-wind expansion. In January 2025, the President of the United States signed an executive order that withdraws the entire outer continental shelf from the future of offshore wind leasing. Not only did he do that, he paused all new and renewable lease permits and rights of way for wind energy on federal lands and waters. Next, he's also initiated a review of the existing leases with potential cancellation modifications. Point 2, new federal oversight delays projects. All wind and solar projects on federal lands and waters must now receive personal approval from the Interior Secretary, Doug Bergman. This change adds significant regulatory delays and uncertainty to project timelines. Just telling you what this lay of the land is compared to what it was when we first started these conversations. High costs from tariffs and subsidy rollbacks. Tariffs on imported steel, aluminum, and turbine components have increased project costs. That's going to turn into increased electric rates. I'm no fool. New tax legislation signed by the President is rolling back clean energy tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act, making it financially harder for offshore wind developers. So now let's talk about what has that done to the industry. Industry pullbacks and write-downs. Equinor recorded a $955 million write-down on the U.S. offshore wind portfolio, citing administration policy changes. They're divesting. Shell withdrew from the Atlantic Shores project off New Jersey. And this one, projects like South Coast Wind have delayed by years, losing hundreds of millions of expected value. South Coast Wind knows it's in trouble. They already said they are likely going to delay by 4 years. I only have a few more points. Impact on the state climate goals. States like New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, which rely heavily on offshore wind to meet the emission targets. The targets were made under a different administration. I don't know if the targets are right or wrong. What if we're wrong? We're going to ruin a river. That's going to delay timelines, potential energy supply gaps, and challenges to meet the climate mandates. We've heard that. Now, from our president's own mouth, he favors fossil fuels and nuclear over renewables. He has repeatedly criticized wind energy as visually unappealing, environmentally harmful, economically inefficient. The philosophical stance this administration has taken is going to make it very difficult for wind projects. So, again, I'm going to ask the siting board, would you approve a project before you know whether or not the energy source out there in that ocean is actually going to come to fruition for 20 years? I ask you, the most important thing you can do is to go down to Macquarie Point, take your beach chair down there and take a nice visit, and really understand the threat of putting that power line up that river for a project that's deeply in trouble. Thank you.
Christine Carceller, Carceller. There was a couple things that people talked about earlier that I just wanted to make a point on. They talked about offshore wind being cost justified. New York went from $36 a megawatt to $150 a megawatt once offshore wind came online. And that's with subsidies. That's 2.5 times higher. And I'm not sure that's cost justified. We will be failing our residents if that's what we go. It's difficult to live in Rhode Island as it is, if you add that in even more. They said it was safe and clean. Vineyard Wind turbine blade broke during no storm, no wind. And the fiberglass and foam fell into the ocean and landed on Nantucket beaches 15 miles away. Shut down the beaches, wasn't safe, that's what they told them, and it was not financially beneficial for Nantucket during peak season to close their beaches. We're told it's reliable. Look at Texas. They don't even have an offshore wind. They're on land. An ice storm in Texas shut down the power for days, I think almost a week. And that's on land. Add in a nor'easter or a blizzard up here, I can't see them being very reliable. We are being asked to accept long-term risk for short-term gain, and other communities have already shown us what happens when these cables come ashore. In Barnstable, Massachusetts, at Covell's Beach, they were forced to install signs warning the public about high voltage cables buried beneath their town beach. That should be a red flag, and that's what you're asking us to do here in Portsmouth and Island Park. People from Massachusetts and Portsmouth and all over go to Island Park. It's one of the free beaches. If we put high power lines under there, what are we doing to our residents or to the wildlife? On Block Island, it even got worse. Cables were exposed after storms and shifting sands. One of those lines carried over 34,000 volts, and they had to put up buoys and danger markers in public swimming area. That's not a success story. And now here in our own backyard, we're looking at transmission cables running down the Class A Sakonnet River, one of the cleanest, most protected waterways in our state. This isn't just a scenic river, it's a living ecosystem. These cables pose risk to both wildlife and human health through electromagnetic fields, heat emissions, and habitat disruption. We're being asked to run industrial infrastructure through a body of water that supports fish nurseries, migratory birds, and public recreation. And when you come in to do all this in that 2-year, I mean, we kayak, people boat, people swim. We're going to be affecting our economy here for a couple years and our lives, especially the people living in Island Park. Our beaches, our river, our neighborhoods, this is all of ours, not just who live here in Portsmouth. They are not dumping grounds for risky energy infrastructure. Offshore wind companies have other options. I urge you not to approve or support any project that allows high voltage cables to be buried under our coast or through the Sakonnet River. Look at Barnstable, look at Block Island, and now look at us. Let's not be next.
Hi, thank you very much for letting me speak. But before I speak about what's coming, I want to talk about what's already happened. The sister project to this one, Revolution Wind, has already been dumping toxic waste into Narragansett Bay and our wetlands. Some of the contaminated discharge water contains arsenic levels that are 100%, 1,000% above state limits. And yet, despite this blatant environmental violation, our state agencies have just turned a blind eye. No penalties, no accountability, just quiet approvals and excuses while our waters are poisoned. This is the reality of offshore wind development, not the glossy promises or the it's not the glossy promises, but the environmental destruction we're seeing right now, just miles from here. We are at a crossroads. For generations, we have cut down forests, filled the skies with smoke, and poured waste into our waters. We have treated nature not as a gift, but as a resource to be exploited limitlessly, thoughtlessly. And now, in the name of fixing that damage, we are being asked to destroy one of the last truly wild places on Earth, our oceans. But we still have a choice. We can stop repeating the same mistakes. We can reject the arrogance that tells us that more industrialization is a solution to industrial harm. We can refuse to believe the fantasy that covering our ocean with steel turbines, some as tall as skyscrapers, will somehow save our planet. And if you think this won't cause serious environmental damage, then I invite you to read the government's own words. In the official record of decision for this project, the federal government plainly admits that the environmentally preferable alternative is to do nothing, to take no action. Even they know this will harm marine life, whales, fisheries, habitats, and coastal communities. And let's be clear, the economic projections and job numbers you've heard are deeply misleading. All of those rosy forecasts, thousands of jobs, billions in local investment, are based on an economic model that only counts gross jobs created. It ignores jobs that are lost in the fishing industry, in the shipping industry, in the broader marine economy. It ignores long-term damages to our coast and community, and it completely excludes the impact of higher electricity rates on small businesses, families, and the most vulnerable among us. This isn't honest economics. It's propaganda. We deserve the full picture. These projects are not local, and they are not benign. They are being pushed by foreign energy giants, companies that see our ocean as a profit center, not a sacred trust. They're counting on us to be too scared, too desperate, or too naive to say no. But we must say no. Because the climate crisis is fundamentally an ocean crisis. The ocean is the beating heart of the planet. It regulates temperatures, absorbs carbon, and supports every link in the food chain. It is already warming, acidifying, and suffering. Now we're about to saddle that struggling patient with hundreds of massive turbines, thousands of miles of undersea cables that will heat the ocean floor, and years of destructive construction and noise. And on top of that, it's a terrible investment. Offshore wind is, by far, the most expensive form of renewable energy. It costs more than onshore wind, more than solar, more than geothermal, more than hydropower. In fact, it is so expensive that many of the original developers are pulling out, demanding subsidies, or raising prices on ratepayers just to keep their projects afloat. Why are we pouring billions of public dollars in subsidies into a technology that delivers less, costs more, and damages an indescribable amount? This is not progress. This is desperation dressed up as green. If we truly care about the climate, let's invest in solutions that make sense. Small modular nuclear, conservation, grid modernization, and efficiency. Let's be bold enough to imagine a future that reduces man's footprint on this planet. This is our moment to change course, not just for ourselves, but for every generation to come. Please join me in saying no to offshore wind, and yes to protecting our ocean.
Watching from my finger, when I pulled up one finger, it was 1 minute to go.
I'll give you a lot here.
Just be
All right.
careful what finger you
So, yes, that's true too. Maybe I'll put my thumb up, I don't know. It's like, we'll have Carmine Rossi, and that'll be followed by, oh wait a minute, do I have that right? Followed by Erica Hammond and Anthony Cherry. Sorry, go ahead.
Should I call my Rossi?
Excuse me?
Call my Rossi, you said?
Oh yes, Carmine, oh, did I follow up? Did I?
You should have called me.
And what was your name?
Stephen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
You
it
know,
doesn't matter. Yeah.
You know, I got ahead of myself with night, and I apologize that I didn't call you up. So the names are in the right order. I just skipped over you. Go ahead, Mr. Knight.
Oh, thank you for all your work. I'm relatively new to the state, and I've only been here for the last 4 or 5 years. It's a beautiful state, and it's a beautiful community. Oh, sorry. It's a little low. Yeah, I'll lean. Yeah, And I'm not in depth in this issue, and I just as by way of background, I've been and am a liberal Democrat, and I am, however, married to my wife who just spoke, and I love her, and so I listen to her. And so I came to this position that I describe relatively reluctantly, because like a good liberal Democrat, I'd like to feel good about the things we're doing, and I do believe that climate change is a problem. I think that plenty of people have had and given lots of facts. I'm also a physician, and at one point a scientist, and have started companies. Mostly, well, I've started companies. I don't know, is there anybody from any of the companies here? I don't think so. This is the community. I would say that it's very hard to be certain about any of these things. And someone mentioned earlier on about the meeting the renewable energy target. The renewable energy says nothing about carbon. And having spent a lot of time now sympathetically reading, and then reading with some interest and reluctantly coming to a conclusion, I can honestly say the numbers do not add up. I do know that when companies redact appendices, when they are going to get an enormous subsidy for simply attaching a cable and then collecting a 70% subsidy, they will do a lot of things. As far as I can tell, and I am, as I mentioned, a scientist, and I deal with numbers, and develop drugs, even during the pandemic, and I know everyone wants to do something, and so this is something that we can do. We didn't develop those vaccines without running trials. This is an enormous project. It is an expensive project involving centuries-old technology that's been souped up. As far as I can tell, it is the most expensive, it takes up the most area, and it actually destroys the most natural life. And it's very rare, I think, that to save the environment, you industrialize the environment. I don't think that that generally works out well. So I would simply say for everyone here to have humility about what is going to be done. Because, as someone said, I don't believe it is temporary. This is a beautiful state. It is the ocean state. You are ripping up, right off the coast and up your rivers, a lot of what is precious marine life and what has made this state, one of the things, besides its people, that have made this state special for hundreds of thousands of years. So this will not, my prediction, even though I don't have certitude about it, is that if you approve this and the others go in, these companies will not be there 10, 20 years when they fail. As was pointed out, they don't reserve money and have not reserved money to take them down. And they will sit up there as a burnt-out legacy of bad decision-making that was made based on good, I would say, goodwill and lots of wonderful intentions, but not considering all of the unintended consequences.
Thank you, Mr. Minister.
Frank Haggerty, Haggerty. Request for the Rhode Island Energy Facility Siting Board to delay the vote on the South Coast Wind application for a license to build major energy facilities until the Rhode Island AG lawsuit outcome is known. This delay is crucial to prioritize transparency and due diligence in matters that impact both the environment, local communities, and ratepayers. On May 5th, 2025, Rhode Island Attorney General Peter Nerone joined 17 Attorney Generals in suing the Trump administration over the executive order that is reviewing offshore wind projects. The Attorney General represents state agencies, departments, commissions, and the interests of the public. This legal action underscores the ongoing tension between federal policies and state-level environmental and economic initiatives. On June 10, 2025, Michael Brown, the CEO of South Coast Wind, submitted a declaration in the same 17-state federal lawsuit number 125 CV 11221. On page 11 of the declaration states, item 35, if the present moratorium is not lifted, South Coast Wind will be forced to abandon current negotiations with Massachusetts and Rhode Island regarding the execution of PPAs, power purchase agreements. A power purchase agreement is supposed to be a long-term contract between the energy suppliers and South Coast Wind. In August 2023, after 1 year, South Coast Wind canceled its power purchase agreements with Eversource, National Grid, and Unitil. To date, South Coast Wind has invested $600 million to plan, develop, and facilitate the construction project. South Coast Wind, after 2023, was awarded power purchase agreements between Massachusetts and Rhode Island. They will be unable to negotiate with each state's largest utilities and possibly until the end of 2025. The cost of living has increased by approximately 6% since 2023. If the Rhode Island Energy Facility Siting Board votes for the Southwest Wind construction before the completion of the May 2025 Rhode Island Attorney General's lawsuit, ratepayers could be exposed to increased electric rates. A ruling is anticipated in September. Rhode Island Energy has set November 1st, 2025 as a deadline for offshore wind procurements. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Ben Rates. I've been in Newport for over 25 years. My first career was as a naval aviator and an aeronautical engineer. My second career was managing manufacturing companies. In fact, my first job was at Reynolds Aluminum, where I was responsible for introducing the Reynolds solar hot water system, which went on the roof of residences in commercial buildings. I also converted one of my gas plants meant to build brick, which is a very energy-intensive industry, from firing coal to firing sawdust, because we could get sawdust almost for free because all the sawmills were just dumping it in the woods. So I've been involved in the energy side of this. I'm here because there were 4 of us who founded the Energy Council of Rhode Island, and we all agreed to support the July 13th letter written to the chairman here about the legal aspects and the environmental risks that have not been looked into, and we support that letter by Green Oceans. But that's not what I'm going to talk to you about. This debate is really about whether this project is going to make us better off. And I can create jobs. I can take a chair and hurl it through a window and that'll create some jobs. We can decide to build a replica of an Egyptian pyramid here, take up less space, and that'll give us tens of thousands of jobs. Will we be better off? So the question is, what is this really going to do? What the industry has done is said, we'll produce a megawatt, and every megawatt that we produce will replace the megawatt produced by a fossil fuel plant. Well, that's not true. They also say we'll do 70,000 homes. That's not true, because the wind only produces electricity with offshore wind about 40% of the time. They don't count the other 60%. Well, who produces it then? The fossil fuel industry does. So no matter how many wind towers you have, you're going to have a fossil fuel industry because you need something that's on demand. In your home, you have many things that need 120 volts. And if you vary that considerably, you're going to blow the compressor in your refrigerator, and you're going to blow your computer, and you're going to do a lot of things, and we're going to have gray out. So the electricity has to be at a constant voltage. The only way that can be done, of course, is if you have something to back it up that ramps up and down to keep it even. Those are the fossil fuel plants. In fact, those are the gas plants usually, because they're more flexible and they are connected to the distribution system. Now what happens with that is, it's like driving a car in traffic instead of driving it on a highway. It affects your fuel consumption and your emissions. And nobody in the industry is saying anything about any real tests to examine how is this all going to work. Except Texas did, because Texas is a area which has its own grid. Unlike ISO New England, the state of Texas is its own electric grid. And when they did this test, they had 2,800 industrial-sized turbines. And the Electric Reliability Council of Texas commissioned this to the local university, and they studied it for 5 years, exactly how much was produced by wind towers, how much was produced by fossil fuel. And guess what? It turned out that because of the inefficiency of ramping gas plants up and down and having to convert to single cycle turbines instead of double cycle, which are twice as fuel conscious, it actually turned out that they produced no extra carbon savings, and they did not save 1 ounce of fossil fuel. And there are at least 5 studies out there that have been done that have been proven and checked by the Argonne National Laboratories as being valid in every way. And there have been no studies I know of that say otherwise. Well, if that's the case, why are we even talking about this? Thank you.
Hans Scholl.
Priscilla Wong, WONG. So I'm speaking tonight on behalf of concerned Rhode Island residents regarding sediment testing or the lack thereof associated with this South Coast Wind project. We're deeply concerned by the absence of up-to-date site-specific sediment testing, particularly around the proposed. Sorry, sounds loud. We're already up. So we're deeply concerned by the absence of up-to-date site-specific sediment testing, particularly around the proposed horizontal directional drilling, or HDD, pits in Mount Hope Bay and the Sakana River. These areas are not just any coastal zones, they're legacy pollution sites affected by decades of industrial discharges along the Taunton River, Mount Hope Bay, and in the Sakana River. These are not hypothetical risks. The Narragansett Bay Estuary Program's most recent State of the Bay and its Watershed Report confirms the presence of elevated levels of heavy metals and persistent contaminants in many of these waters and sediments due to past industrial activity. Yet despite this well-documented pollution history, South Coast Wind has not provided recent location-specific data about sediment contamination levels in or around its proposed HDD drilling zones or the cable route. This is troubling, especially since dredging or disturbing contaminated sediment without proper safeguards will resuspend toxic pollutants, threatening marine life, fisheries, and public health. Environmental due diligence is non-negotiable and is required by this law that's been brought up a few times tonight. Rhode Island General Law 42-98-23, which says, "It shall be the policy of this state, Rhode Island, to assure that the energies shall be produced at the least possible cost to the consumer, consistent with the objective of ensuring that the construction, operation, and decommissioning of the facility shall produce the fewest possible adverse effects on the quality of the state's environment, most particularly its land and its wildlife and resources, the health and safety of its citizens, the purity of its air and water, its aquatic and marine life, and its aesthetic and recreational value to the public." Additionally, Section 42, Paragraph 7 notes, "Before approving the construction, operation, and/or alteration of major energy facilities, the board shall determine whether cost-effective efficiency and conservation opportunities provide an appropriate alternative to the proposed facility. This has been mentioned before, but it should be reiterated that decommissioning is mentioned in that same law. Yet so far, these projects being built are not required by the state to provide any money or bonds towards decommissioning. So therefore, we respectfully ask the EFSB, before considering a decision to approve or deny South Coast Wind's application, to mandate targeted sediment testing before any dredging or seabed disturbance occurs, to require this testing specifically near the HDD entry and exit pits and along the cable corridor, and to ensure the results are reviewed by appropriate environmental and public health agencies and made public. Without this testing, the risk is that buried pollutants will be released into the water column, adversely impacting coastal habitats and putting nearby communities at risk. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Great. Okay, good evening, Mr. Chairman Kuratowski and the members of the Rhode Island Facilities Siting Board. I'm a resident and a property owner of Portsmouth, and I'm speaking on behalf of the concerned Rhode Island residents in opposition to South Coast Wind's application, specifically with respect to the recent federal policy shift impacting offshore wind projects. The executive order on July 7, 2025, President Trump signed an executive order directing the Treasury Department to limit wind and solar tax credits. The executive order argues that wind and solar are unreliable, compromise the electric grid, and harm the nation's natural landscape. Furthermore, it prioritizes affordable, reliable energy resources like oil, gas, coal, and nuclear, stating that the wind and solar should not discipline these. Additionally, the big beautiful budget bill recently passed ends tax credits for wind projects unless they produce electricity by December 31, 2027, or start construction within a year of the bill's enactment. This federal shift fundamentally challenges the assumptions underlying South Coast Wind's project. The executive order emphasizes that wind energy relies on subsidies to be profitable and poses risk to national security, economic growth, and fiscal health. These changes signal a clear move at the federal level away from supporting offshore wind, seriously raising the questions about the project's long-term viability and the cost-effectiveness for Rhode Island residents. In light of these changes, I urge the Rhode Island Energy Facilities Siting Board to fully consider this federal policy shift in your deliberations and put a full stop to advancing any further permitting at the state level until there has been a complete review of the permitting of the federal level. The new focus on reliable domestic energy sources and the reduction of wind subsidies must inform your decision on the South Coast Wind's application. Approving a project misaligned with the national priorities could burden Rhode Islanders with costly, unreliable, undispatchable energy and jeopardize the stability of the grid. I respectfully request that the Energy Facilities Siting Board recognize this policy change and prioritize Rhode Island's economic energy interests by critically evaluating this project, and if not outright denying this application, at least postponing your final decision until the Secretary of the Interior has reviewed this project. Along with this, I would like you to consider the ill effects of passing this bill and what it would have on our local neighborhoods here in Portsmouth. Transportation routes already backed up for the Mount Hope Bridge in Portsmouth, on Bristol Ferry Road and Boyd's Lanes. Our local family-run businesses and their employees and livelihoods. The electric bills in Rhode Island have tripled in the last year because of offshore wind, with no regard for our residents. When neighbors ask, should I pay my electric bill or buy food this week? It's definitely a time for you to consider the impacts of passing this. Please make your decision because of the negative effects on the locals here.
I ask you to please look at the big picture and please do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Thank you for your time.
This is Paul Kesson, KESSON. I'm standing in front of you tonight to ask you to delay the decision on this decision until the lawsuit between Rhode Island Peter Nerona and now a partner on June 10, 2025 Southwind. I ask you to do this, to delay this decision until, in fact, they meet all the requirements. They haven't. You've heard before that they have not done core samples as they come up the river. And it's good to see Mr. Gray here because he's part of DEM and understands all of it in closing down the river with the other problems we've had. This river has been a form of pollution for multiple years. Portsmouth has solved that problem. But what's been put into the river is still there. Okay? I've done this job for the U.S. government in my past life. 1990, by the way. 1,500 feet of underwater cable, 6-inch diameter. Okay? The sled that we used, pulled by a 200-foot ship, injected water into the bottom to bury the cable. We also buried fiber alongside, about the thickness of my hair, at least when it was red. Okay? And we were required to put a diaper on the sled, such that none of the material excavated from the bottom would land anywhere else other than back under the sled. That's not what is being proposed by South Coast. There are no wedding gowns, whatever you want to call it, that contain the contaminant. The horizontal boring, that's another issue. I don't think that's as much as anywhere else. But I want to say this. In my 45 years of doing this for a living, typically for the federal government, we've never gone to a public beachhead. It's always been a government-owned piece of property. There were no public access. When we hit 35 feet of water, which is most of Secundus River, we were required to put in articulating concrete block, which was held together as we set them with a crane, okay, with bungee cord, so it could articulate to the bottom. That's not what's happening here. Okay? The devastation from this dredge, when you turn the corner at Little Compton and come all the way to Portsmouth Beach, is going to be incredible. We know we've put pollutants in the ground. It's been a cohort bed that's been closed for 30 years. I'm not a member of a 501c. I'm not a member of a union. Okay, I am a Portsmouth resident. We've been on this island since my uncle and grandfather turned the lights on from Washington Square to 1 Mile Corner when it was a dirt road. So I have a lot of heritage here. I'd like to not see it destroyed because we think we've got a solution. If it was net zero, and let's talk about net zero, let's talk about we're going to build a turbine, we're going to go mine ore, we're going to make the chemicals for the blade, copper for the generator, okay? If we were all talking net zero, we'd all be living in log homes because we'd cut them in the forest. We'd make side, we wouldn't cut 2x4s, and we'd all be living in log homes. This design is not net zero. Neither are the 2 turbines in Portsmouth, which I was a member of the council on when we decided not to do this, but the next council did. And all I'm trying to say is we've lost 2 turbines in Portsmouth because of the generator. It's not a reliable source. I want to talk about the generator in open ocean. Mr. Gray ought to be concerned about this, even though it's not in our coastal waters. Putting 96-degree water on the surface is going to make what appears to be climate change even worse. That first 100 feet of water is now going to be very warm. Just like it is in the bay, when Newport Water creates 13 million gallons a day, and we flush it out. It's only one flush away. We're at 55-degree water to the top of Narragansett Bay. Thank you very much.
You pronounced it beautifully.
Okay, 1 second, let me mention a couple other names here.
Okay.
Craig Casper is next, and then Corey Wheeler. Go ahead, Ms.
I can't follow that. So I'm just going to say that I'm a Portsmouth resident, I am a business owner, and I am a Tiverton resident as well. In Tiverton, there is such a push for affordable housing. So the thing is, the neighborhood that I live in is now being threatened because there's going to be a high-density housing development built right next to us in a wetland, and that is going to create a problem for our wells and our septic systems. I appreciate the position that everyone is in and the amount of money that's already being thrown around. I think the majority of opponents that I'm aware of, we're so brokenhearted that the town of Portsmouth ever opened this door to begin with, because it makes it seem like Portsmouth just wanted the money in order to work with South Coast Wind. In Rhode Island, there is a push for high-density housing in every town. That's going to mean that the demand for power will increase. My bone of contention is that using the Secana River Bridge is a shortcut. So South Coast Wind could still do their project, but they don't have to cut through a pristine waterway and potentially jeopardize, the aquatic life that we have, our livelihood, our fishermen. So I understand jobs are so important. All of our families are beloved. You have a terrible decision in front of you, and I don't know what the right answer is, but I know that we're always putting the cart before the horse. And is it worth ruining our immediate existence for something that's still not going to be enough because we're all pushing for so much growth? So thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Corey, C-O-R-E-Y, Wheeler, Forrest, F-O-R-R-E-S-T. I reside here in Portsmouth, but I'm a fish dealer and commercial fisherman out of Secana Point for nearly 30 years. My family has been fishing in these same waters since the 1800s. It's more than a livelihood, it's a legacy built on tradition, responsibility, and respect for the ocean. The knowledge passed down through generations and the way fishing is done today is proof that responsible, community-rooted fisheries work. We are living examples of long-term sustainability. For the past 6 months, I've been fishing offshore. I've spent more time on the water than I have on land, and on a weekly basis, we navigate through the offshore wind turbines. It's either add hours to an already long trip by trying to go around the turbines, or risk going through them. We always go through them. To add to the navigational nightmare, I've repeatedly witnessed offshore wind safety vessels intentionally block our course while we're simply trying to get to our fishing grounds in the most efficient and safe manner. They do it again on the way back when we're just trying to get home safely. Other commercial fishermen I've spoken to have had the same experience. To experience the turbines up close and personal is something no photograph can truly capture. The scale and destruction of the waters, the marine ecosystem, and our way of life is overwhelming, and yet it's being ignored. That's why I'm here to speak out against South Coast Wind's proposal to come up the Secana River in Mount Hope Bay. NOAA, in its comments to BOEM, stated a clear preference for a land-based cable route, one that avoids the river and protects designated habitat areas of particular concern. The CRMC has also urged the company to pursue an overland route. The Secana River is classified as essential fish habitat by the New England Fishery Management Council. These waters are not just our workplace, they're living, breathing ecosystems, and yet every offshore wind document is full of language like anticipated, likely, and expected. These are guesses. Nowhere do they address what happens if those guesses are wrong. We're moving forward with a massive, unproven, long-term industrial project based on uncertainty. The only thing that all these projects have agreed upon with certainty is that it will have adverse effects on our fisheries. Meanwhile, fishermen like me are held to the highest environmental and regulatory standards in the world. We must protect fish stocks, minimize bycatch, conserve habitat, and consider the long-term health of our coastal communities. If we're held to those standards, and we should be, then why aren't offshore wind developers? Rhode Island is the ocean state. Fishing isn't just our heritage, it's the backbone of our coastal economy and national food security. We fished these waters responsibly for generations. We want to keep it that way. Offshore wind, as it's currently being forced upon us, threatens everything we worked so hard to protect. Thank you.
Can everybody hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Renee Critchley, Critchley, third generation Portsmouth resident and homeowner. Just like Ms. Gleason said, this is my home, my island. The streets that I would travel are going to be ripped up. The wetlands are going to be disturbed, and everything I've ever known is going to be uprooted and destroyed. And I love my home, and I will fight with my last breath in my body to oppose this. Please join me in saying no. Dredging 20 plus miles of the Secundit River, generating sediment plumes and dispersing decades of toxic pollutants that will destroy the ocean and the river seabed and ecosystem.
No. No. No.
Say no to cables introducing potentially dangerous EMFs in the Secundit River.
No.
Say no.
No.
To disrupting, risking Island Park beachgoers, walkers, swimmers, boaters, local businesses, and the environment. Don't forget our children. Say no.
No.
Say no to the potential repeat of Block Island cable failure and resurfacing on the beach, costing Rhode Island ratepayers $31+ million to replace and rebury. Say no.
No.
To cables in the Secundit and the Mount Hope Bay that can break and disrupt electric services to the grid. Say no.
No.
Say no to risking area residents 24/7 living the underground 350,000 high voltage cables with electromagnetic fields like me. Say no.
No.
Say no, Rhode Island energy facilities, to South Coast Wind and make our position clear. Say no.
No.
Say no to cables traversing Mount Hope Bay to a contaminated industrial site with oil and hazardous materials. Say no.
No.
Say no to foreign-owned high-voltage cables to prevent spying, security threats, splicing, cyber attacks, power outages, and blackouts. We say no.
No.
Say no to offshore wind projects that risk national security and interferes with the United States Coast Guard search and rescue operations. Say no.
No.
Say no, Rhode Island Energy Facilities Siting Board, and make our position clear. Say no.
No.
To unreliable wind that needs dispatchable fuel backup 24/7 that causes all fossil fuel generators to burn fossil fuel, which adds CO2 in our atmosphere when they ramp up and down to supply power to the grid when the wind dies. Please say no.
No.
Say no wind energy generation system that is an inferior, unpredictable, intermittent, higher cost source of electricity. Our current system is predictable, stable, and designed to run steadily. Please say no.
No.
Please say no to tripling our electric bill.
No. No.
Please say no to energy wind projects that risk the spillage of grease, oil, toxic forever chemicals, including SF6, sulfur hexafluoride. Please say no.
No.
Say no to wind projects killing millions of zooplankton, which is the food source for the large mammals that are essential nutrients to the North Atlantic right whale. This includes copepods, the tiny crustaceans that die in the open loop cooling systems of 96 degrees that will be dumped in our water, of offshore substations. Please say no.
No.
Say no to harassing and deafening of the marine animals with sonic blasts that disorient them and lead them to strandings or ship strikes. Please say no.
No.
Please say no to ruining Aquidneck Island's tourist industry and serenity by wrecking the views from our pristine beaches. Please say no.
No.
Say no to decimating Cox's Ledge with miles of concrete and crushed stone, ruining the best cod breeding on the East Coast. Please say no.
No, 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 no.
Ms. Cushly, can you wrap up with it?
I've got three more sentences,
All right, go
please.
for it.
Thank you. I've waited like 3 hours to say this. Say no to wiping out the New England commercial fishing industry. It's thousands of jobs, jeopardizing families' welfare, Portsmouth, surrounding cities and towns, and one of the many seafood communities. Please say no.
No.
And please say no. Say no to Rhode Island Energy, the facilities, the siting board, South Coast Wind's application, and take a stand and protect our citizens, our river, our bay, our ocean. Just say no, make our position clear. I'm going to say kindly, no thank you. Thank you.
See how this goes. I am Martha Croziera. I'm from Middletown. I live very close to Second Beach, and if I just walk down my road, I can see all of the wind turbines in the ocean. These are the ocean-based turbines. They're there. I came here because I haven't quite made up my mind on this particular issue. I'm still in the information gathering phase, and I knew there were going to be a lot of really smart people here tonight, people who had been doing a lot of research, both pro and con, and I wanted to hear what they had to say. And I've learned a lot just sitting here for a few hours. Quite a few people this evening have talked about Texas. And they've used Texas for a number of examples. And I find that kind of hits me close to home because 2 members of my immediate family have been involved for decades in energy in Texas. And they're on the opposite ends of the spectrum. One held leadership positions, national leadership positions in fossil fuels, natural gas, with El Paso Natural Gas and with Conoco. And another member of the family who's younger than I is the CEO of a very important renewable energy company out of Texas, and he's probably built more wind turbines than anybody else, land-based, in Texas. There are pros and cons to both fossil fuels and to renewable energy. There are problems with the components in wind turbines and in the solar panels because of the silica and things like that. And then, of course, you're talking about the components of the wind turbines. Some of the components are toxic, and they still don't know what to do with them when a wind turbine has come to its end. It's kind of like toxic waste. So that's an issue that's bouncing around inside my head. Climate change is real. In this galaxy in which our Earth spins, stars are born every day, stars implode. We are in the process of evolution as a planet, and there's no getting around it. Everything is changing, and we are accommodating to it. When I was a little girl, we would get snow where it would, I'm little, but it would be up to my hips almost in our driveway. I grew up in Newport, and we don't have snow like that anymore. So I see it, I feel it, absolutely. And that was before every home had 2 or 3 cars in the driveway. So yeah, it bothers me though when I hear some people who are so fervent in their support of just more and more wind turbines, either land-based or ocean-based, that they seem to think that Rhode Island really has been backward in this issue. We haven't. I mean, I've got them down the street from my house. They're off Block Island. I mean, we're getting more and more. Rhode Island is a leader, actually, in this. And I hope that our perspective and our research in the components of everything that we do, whether it's wind turbines or different ways of providing solar storage through batteries, that sort of thing, I hope that continues to evolve and that we are more accepting of it as we move along. But when we're talking about batteries, I'd like to know, are the batteries that are used in turbines, are they lithium-based batteries? Because if they are, what do we do with them? They become toxic waste too. So we have to think about that. The other thing, I spent 10 years at the Naval War College, and national security was in the air. I mean, this is what we dealt with. And undersea cables present a tremendous threat. And we have to be very careful how we deploy them, whether it's through ocean-based wind turbines or any other way. If you think about what the people of Taiwan right now are dealing with from China, it's constant harassment. And at least 24 times a year over the last couple of years, the Chinese have cut cables to Taiwan, and that completely ruins their communications, because most cell phones are, the transmissions come through undersea cables. They do not come from satellites. So and I don't want those cables running right in front of the Naval Undersea Warfare Center. That's one of the most top secret research centers on planet Earth. And those cables are taking in data all the time, whether it's about weather conditions, ocean conditions, or maritime traffic near a very important Navy base. We have to think about that. And I hope that there are plans. One woman did mention that there's something about a plan in place to have South Coast sign a contract for getting rid of the towers when they've reached their end of life stage, like 15 years. So I think we need to know more about that before we should proceed.
Thank you. So we have 8 left, starting with Tom Clamau, followed by Peter Trafton, Joel Gates, and Carol Mello, and a few more after that. Is Mr. Clamau here? Okay.
Carol Mello, Portsmouth resident for 43 years. I'm also a captain and fisherman. I've been in these waters fishing for about 48 years, because I came before I even became a resident. So I'm deeply concerned about the public health, environmental, and national security risks posed by South Coast Wind's proposed 350,000 volt underwater and underground transmission cables. The Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management and the National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration and South Coast all acknowledge that there will be adverse public health, safety, and economic impacts. And these are all in their statements. You don't have to take my word for it. I guess that's why South Coast entered into a good neighbor agreement with Portsmouth. $23 million over a course of 33 years. That's equivalent of 17,000 Portsmouth residents, each receiving $40 a year. In my view, that's not a great deal. Because actually, in 33 years, I think I'm going to be dead. So all that money is not going to matter to me. So that was a terrible deal. Landing the cable at Island Park Beach and constructing the route through residential neighborhoods, commercial areas, and marshlands to Brayton Point will disrupt recreational tourism and local economies in Portsmouth. Across Aquidneck Island, residents will be living in close proximity to 350,000 volts daily, with no clarity on long-term health effects. And by the way, this has not been checked no one's been doing the test to see what the effects will really be. The Secana Coast, lagoons, and Narragansett Bay are already impaired by excessive nutrients and pathogens. Laying 20 miles of submarine cable risks resuspending industrial air contaminants buried in the seafloor, threatening marine ecosystems and shellfishing areas, aquaculture farms, and fishing livelihoods. Once disturbed, these toxins can't be easily contained or undone. So once you screw it up, you live with it. South Coast Wind's monitoring and mitigation plans during dredging remain vague. I urge the siting board to require core sampling along the entire cable route to determine contaminant levels and conduct redistribution modeling before any excavation. On electromagnetic fields, the cables will generate high heat up to 90 degrees Celsius and unknown levels of EMF. This poses risks to endangered species like Atlantic sturgeon and migratory sharks documented in the area. A second $350,000 volt cable would double the impacts. And also, while I'm talking about the impact of heat, each substation will release 70 million gallons of hot water every day into the ocean. So can you tell me how that is helping climate change? If you can, I will be right with you. But 70 million gallons of hot water thrown into our ocean along with chemicals, there's no way that could be good for our ocean. There's no way that could be good for us. And no one will convince me otherwise. If you can, good luck. This project also poses national security concerns. Undersea cables are vulnerable to breakage, sabotage, or cyber attack. The burial depth must be strictly monitored and enforced with contingency plans in place. In conclusion, South Coast transmission cables threaten environmental health, human safety, and regional stability. The Energy Facility Siting Board has a duty under Rhode Island law to ensure that energy produced at least cost with the fewest environmental harms. So we need to know what those harms are if we're going to stop them from happening. I urge you to reject this application unless these serious risks are fully addressed. There are other things we can do, and no one wants to hear nuclear, but that's a big deal. The 90-degree water, and I also wanted to say that I am a union family too. I've been part of a laborers union for 48 years, and not all union people agree with this destruction of our environment. So I'm asking for you to please deny this application for the love of our environment. Thank you.
Philip Driscoll, Tricia Morgan, Louisa Boatwright, and Jennifer Lorelli, unless, of course, somebody else has ever been to. Philip Driscoll, are you here? No? Philip Driscoll's not here. Okay. Tricia Morgan.
Yeah. I know you guys are all tired and just eager to get home, so I will try to be brief, but there are some things that I would like to say. First of all, I really want to commend everybody and how well you've spoken and brought real arguments, real reasons for your position. And to the board, because you seem to have listened to all of them, which is really good. You're paying attention, and I think that's great. I think that decisions are best made when you have data. I call it data-driven decision-making, and that's really important. So I just wanted to add a little bit of data here. And some of it has been said already. But do you know that Rhode Island has the 8th lowest carbon emissions per capita in the United States? We didn't get there by renewable energy. We didn't get there by offshore wind. We got there from natural gas. It is a very clean energy source, and it runs 24/7, 365, not 50% of the time. In 2007, when the Block Island 5 was proposed, the PUC did a study of the cost-benefit analysis of those 5 turbines, and they rejected them. They said it would cost Rhode Island ratepayers another $500 million over 10 years, and it has. The legislature, the politicians, overruled them and allowed the Block Island 5 to be built. And now you cannot get data from the electric company to tell you exactly how much electricity they are actually producing out there. However, we do know that Block Island still has gas turbines that they turn on. So what I find is missing is a current PUC analysis, cost-benefit analysis of South Coast Wind. They have failed to do that, and we have failed to require it of them. I guess earlier on they didn't have a quorum, so they said, well, we're not going to comment. They need to comment. They're the only ones who can get the data from the electric companies. We can't make a decision unless we have that data. We can't make a good decision unless we have it. I also noticed that we don't have a thorough and honest environmental study. It was noted that the Rhode Island Health Department said, none of the cable will go close to known sources of toxins. They didn't say that they studied the entire route, just the known. Well, the known areas of toxin can be, yes, a half a mile away. We don't care about those. We care about what's in the path of this cable, and that hasn't been studied. You need to demand it. They're really crafty with that known sources. We want the unknown sources as well. I also noticed that a life cycle assessment has not been done on offshore wind. That is cradle to grave. How much carbon does offshore wind actually produce? If you had a life cycle assessment done with internationally recognized ISO 9000 standards, you would find out what EOM has concluded, that it's not carbon neutral. It adds carbon to the atmosphere, it doesn't take it away. The economic assessment, we've been told that 17,000 job years are created. That's 850 long-term full-time workers. A job year is different from a job. If these projects or facilities out there, whatever you want to call them, last 20 to 30 years, it's 850 long-term full-time jobs, or 566. I don't think they last 30 years, so I used 20. It is so disingenuous for them to say 17,000 job years. It's only 850 people. I've heard that this is going to be really good for our economy. Tell that to Germany. Tell that to England, where people have been plunged into energy poverty. They can't afford their electric bills. Their financial security is ruined. And Germany is losing its industrial base. Now, maybe that's a nothing for Rhode Island. We've already lost our industrial base. But do we want to lose it forever? Do we never want to have good paying jobs for our young people? Of course we don't. I urge you to do a thorough and honest investigation, to follow the data, to not just listen to our testimony, but actually dig it out. And don't go to biased sources. I've noticed that many of the people who are in favor of this are from climate action, are from different environmental groups that are actually funded by the renewable energy industry. Not perhaps the very best sources of data for you. The IPCC is also, I think, suspect. It's hard, I understand, to get the real data, but you're making a really serious decision. It's important. It's important for our economy, it's important for our environment, it's important for families' financial security, their well-being. I urge you to say no, obviously. And thank you, everybody. You may go now.
Well, actually, no. We have Louisa Boatwright.
Thank you for staying so long. My name is Jennifer Lorelli. I'm a homeowner in Providence, Rhode Island. I've lived in Rhode Island since 1972. I grew up in Vancouver, British Columbia, so I'm a Canadian. Canadians, people around the world are wondering what is happening here in the United States. We're going backwards instead of going forward. And I had prepared comments, but my phone died while I was waiting, so I can't refer to those. But one of the things that I learned when I did a little research before coming here, and I agree with the people who have been talking about decisions being made with fact and data-driven and science-based. The Scandinavian industry, the Scandinavian countries' wind industry started in the 1970s. And they have looked at temperature and cabling and fish populations. And they have done the research. And I read that they are continuing to do long-term research because we know, when people started pumping oil, they didn't know that they were going to ruin the world as we know it. It only was a long-term effect that we came to understand. So they are doing long-term research, but the research that they have done since 1970 has shown that their wind industry has not defiled their oceans or ruined their fisheries or increased the temperature of the waters there. Other factors have increased. They acknowledge that these factors are there, but they're not the main. It's not a shattering is what we've heard this evening. We know why the renewable energy forward-looking decisions of the country in recent years have been pulled back. We know why that is. We know that this current administration is being highly funded by the fossil fuel industry. We know the fossil fuel industry knows that its time is limited. Most industry needs to serve their shareholders, and so the fossil fuel industry is plowing ahead to satisfy their shareholders. Now, we as citizens need to take responsibility. I agree with the young man who spoke earlier. We need to be thinking generations out. Canadians are, the Germans are, the Scandinavians are, the Australians are, the French are. China and the United States are very wealthy countries. People recognize us as backward thinking when it comes to the climate. And I hope that you will look in research, not generated by the fuel industry, because they're spending millions of dollars to try to convince you otherwise. Look internationally, look at what they've discovered in their own research over the decades, and see what you would like for decades to come on our East Coast and our West Coast. If we establish an industry here, it will happen in Alaska, it'll happen on the West Coast, it'll happen up and down our coast, and we may enjoy a standard of living like the Scandinavians. Yes, they pay a little bit more for their high standard of living, but they're happy. Thank you.
Thank everyone for being with. We still have quite a few people left, even though it's not as many as we started with. Thank you very much. And I just want to say I really appreciate everyone in good faith trying to stick to the 5-minute rule. If I hadn't done that, there'd still be 20 people on the list. So, you know, if you had cooperated, so I appreciate that. There are going to be evidentiary hearings in August. There are many dates that have been put on the schedule, but they're just there to make sure that we have enough dates to finish the proceedings. And so we accept written commentary right up to the last day that we have to make the decision. Thank you very much.